today's notes are over transformations of exponential and logarithmic functions. You should already be familiar with this notation. So if you're going left or right, remember you're adding or subtracting to the x. Here are some examples. If you're shifting up or down, you're adding to the whole function. If it's a reflection and it's a negative on the x, then that means a reflection over the y-axis. If it's a negative in front of the whole function, a reflection over the x-axis. Horizontal shrink or stretch. I want you to remember that you're going to have to use the reciprocal. So if they tell you shrink by 1/2, you're going to use a 2. If they tell you stretch by 2, you're going to use 1/2. So remember to use the reciprocal. And you're multiplying to the x. Vertical shrink or stretch, we are multiplying to the whole function. And then I also want you to remember that for a shrink, a is going to be less than 1 but greater than 0. A stretch, a is going to be greater than 1. So the factor that you're multiplying by has to be greater than 1 if it's a stretch. If it's a shrink, it has to be less than 1. So those were some of the rules for the exponential. And there's more examples if you want to see how the logarithmic looks like. But it's the exact same notation that we've been using all semester long, all year long. For 1 through 6, they want us to describe the transformation, and then they want us to graph each functions. So let's first highlight any differences that we see. Here I see there's a negative 3 multiplied by the x, and we're also adding 4. The negative in front of the x means a reflection on the y-axis. The 3 represents a vertical stretch. Because 3 is greater than 1, it's a stretch. Since we're adding 4 to the whole function, not just the x, the plus 4 is going to mean up 4. Last thing I need to do is graph it. You can use Desmos. Make sure you graph it and label it. Now let's move on to the next one. Number 2, you have a negative 3 in front of the function, and there's a minus 2 in the parentheses. The negative on the function means a reflection over the x-axis. That 3 means a vertical stretch. The minus 2 means right 2. Now graph it. Make sure you graph your function and you label each function. For number 3, we got a 1/2 in the front. We got plus 7. The 1/2 represents a vertical shrink. And the 7 means to the left 7. Make sure you graph your functions and label them. For number 4, the only difference between f of x and g of x is this minus 4/3. And since 4/3 is being subtracted from the whole function, then we're going to go down. If the 4/3 was in parentheses, then it would be moving right. Now it's time to graph and label. So make sure you draw and label your functions. Now it's time for you to try number 5 and number 6 on your own. And that's it for the notes.